Hello everybody. What is up? Welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz, your host here at Crimes Untold, my podcast, YouTube channel, all of the above. Today we're going to be covering another set of unidentifieds that are now identified as of 2023. Now, if that piqued your interest, I highly suggest you to keep following along with this podcast, or if you're listening over on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, turn your post notifications on to all, because there will also be a video on my YouTube channel of me recording this. So I hope you don't mind my utter grotesqueness of me on a rainy Sunday morning with my lovely cup of pour-over coffee. So today we're going to be discussing, obviously, more unidentifieds that are now identified. So let's jump into our first John Doe case. We're going to be talking about the Cowlitz County John Doe of 2020, a relatively newer case, but in February of 2020, a longshoreman was at the Weyerhaeuser dock in Longview, Washington. This is when they found a set of skeletal remains. This set of remains was in an area behind some blackberry bushes that was very thick, potentially overgrown. So the remains were well buried as well, which is strange. When investigators arrived on scene, they began to process the scene and collect the full set of remains. So from an outsider's perspective, it seems like he was purposely put in this area to be concealed with all intentions of never being found. The King County medical examiner would do an autopsy and explain that there was no signs of trauma on the remains, and this made figuring out the cause of death very tricky. So the technical cause of death is listed as unknown. Dental records were made in order to have a comparison with his national missing persons. Like, if he would ever be identified, it would be on the National Missing Persons database. The Cowlitz County John Doe is believed to be a Caucasian male or a Hispanic adult male. So Jade David Feigert was living in Columbia County, Oregon, when he was last seen in February of 2017. So he was actually being dropped off by his mom in Kelso, Washington, and this is listed as the last official time he was seen alive. He was only 22 years old at the time of his disappearance. So his family didn't know what happened to him and would report him missing in March of 2021, so a few years after he was last seen alive. Ultimately, they wouldn't know until being contacted by detectives working with Othram and focusing on the Cowlitz County John Doe. Monica Feigert was contacted and sent her DNA profile that she had actually had through a DNA testing company and sent this to Othram. Through analysis, they were able to deduce that this was an exact mother-son match. They also took dental records for Jade and this John Doe and compared them. Another complete match. The detectives would also contact his father, Michael Smith, who lived in Texas, or still lives in Texas. So as of right now, the investigation into his death, it was released by detectives that they believed he didn't die as a result of a crime, and his investigation into his death is now closed. For me personally, due to where his body was found and the amount of concealment it takes to bury a body, I still think there's ulterior motives behind his death, but my thoughts could differ from what they're not releasing to the public. And also, it was publicly stated that the family does not wish to be contacted due to now knowing what has happened to their loved one. Next on our list, we're going to be discussing the Granby girl, which is a close-to-home case for me. Quite ironic. So, like I covered in my first identified in 2023 case, the Bedford, New Hampshire Jane Doe, that was the oldest cold case. This one strikes close to home because of where she was found and where, you'll understand. So, on November 15th of 1978, the body of a woman was found off of Amherst Road in Granby, Massachusetts, if you want to be particular. So this set of remains was buried under some leaves and found by some loggers. This woman had blonde or light brown hair. She had a ring with some initials on it, but they weren't entirely legible, and it was made of, the ring was made of like a yellowy metal material, so probably like a yellow gold. She was wearing a green collared short sleeve shirt that looked like it has like a small checkered pattern on it, or maybe like a smaller plaid pattern on it, and it was adorned with a green swan on the front, and it's a size 14-16. She was also wearing some blue jeans, brown shoes, black underwear, a bra with no listed description, a blue sweater vest as well. So during her autopsy, it was determined that she was shot in the temple and had a brown leather belt around her neck. So investigators believe that whomever killed her dragged her to the burial site using the belt around her neck, and it's believed to be this way because it's tied around her neck and there's signs of like being pulled on her body. The examiner also determined that she was between the ages of 19 and 27 and that she died in June of 1978. So the Granby girl was buried in West Cemetery, and the community of Granby afforded the stone for her burial site. So in the decades following her death, detectives still were trying to figure out who she was. They never gave up, which is something that I find commendable to these investigators, because a lot of detectives and investigators will simply just give up. And I absolutely hate that. It pisses me off. They wanted to change the marker on her grave. They wanted it to be changed from unknown to who she really was. And with the help of Othram, in 2021, the authorities in Massachusetts sent DNA from the Granby girl to Othram to aid in her identification. So this then would lead them to a woman in Maryland, of which was related to the Granby girl, and she then would send them into the direction of a relative that would blow their minds. This woman would lead them to the Granby girl's children, one in particular, her son, or a possible son of the Granby girl. At the time of her disappearance, this boy, who they received the DNA from, he was 5 years old at the time, and his DNA would be run in comparison to that of the Granby girl, and it was 100% parent-child match. Most unsolved cases do indeed go cold, and some go unsolved. But thankfully to these investigators, they never gave up, and this boy received clarification as to what happened to his mother. So on March 6th of 2023, the Granby girl was publicly identified as Patricia Ann Tucker, who went missing from Boston in 1978, hence why it's a close-to-home case. She was known as Patricia Heckman, Patricia Dale, and Patricia Coleman around the time of her death. She was married 3 times. So in 1977, Patricia married Gerald Coleman in Middletown, Connecticut, and they lived along the Pocotapog. I'm going to butcher that every time I say it. They were living along Lake Pocotapog in East Hampton, Connecticut, and this was around the time of her death. He never reported her missing, which is oddly strange because that's his wife, but he fortunately would go on to die when he was in a Massachusetts state prison in 1996 from natural causes, where he was serving a sentence for rape and armed robbery. But the worst part about her story for me is the fact that the last time she was actually seen alive was when she dropped her son off in Chicopee, Mass, with an old acquaintance named Laura Holmes on August 8th of 1978. So this is when the timeline of her death kind of differs. So they believe that she died in June, but actually the last time she was seen was in August. So Matthew remembers seeing her mother in a car with a man that he didn't recognize. And for me, this is like the worst thing I could have ever read when it comes to her cold case. Because for 2 days, he thought that his mother would come back for him. Same thing with Laura Holmes. She thought that she was just simply watching him for just a few days. But when she didn't come back, she was never seen again. And then Laura contacted, obviously, the Massachusetts police about this. Obviously, Matthew's not her son. He then would be reunited with his father. For me, that just is heartbreaking. I will say her husband, Gerald Coleman, is the prime suspect when it comes to her murder. And if anyone has any information about her death or Gerald Coleman, please contact the Granby police. Their number is 413-467-9222. Again, please contact the Granby police if there's any information you know or somebody knows in regards to the death of the Granby girl and Gerald Coleman at 413-467-9222. There is so much more to investigate for this case that is still unclear, and they are continuing to work on her case. Next on our list is the lady in the fridge, or Amanda Schumann-Deza. So, the lady in the fridge, she went missing in 1994 when she was last seen alive at an apartment complex in Napa, California. She was with an unknown male that she had met while at a rehabilitation facility. So at the time she was last seen, she was 29 years old, and she would be found in a fridge that she would be put into after, her death. And she would be discovered 6 months after in the Holt, Stockton area of California. So this refrigerator was submerged partially in an irrigation canal that is located off of Bacon Island Road. It is believed that the fridge was underwater for months due to how decomposed her remains were. So the discovery was made on March 29th of 1995. She had clothing and jewelry on her body, which was odd and ruled out robbery. She also had cosmetic or maintenance work done on her body, such as her teeth were in excellent shape with just a few restorations, and her nails were manicured. Hence, she took care of herself. She also had like a strawberry blonde, reddish blonde, red hair. And due to pictures we have of this Jane Doe, it's more likely to be believed that she had her hair professionally done, or she maintained her hair color herself. As one that maintains her hair color herself, it generally gets pretty pricey when you do it professionally. So doing it yourself is more cost effective. Same thing with manicuring yourself as well. I do at-home Gel X extensions, and it is entirely cost effective as being a parent. Same thing with the lady in the fridge. So the clothing on her body and the items that were found with her remains were a Levi brand shorts, a Victoria's Secret branded bra, hiking boots that all it says is that they are expensive. It doesn't give the brand, just that they were expensive. Fruit of the Loom t-shirt, a blue sweatshirt, an unopened ice bag with the words Glacier Party on it, a leather necklace with charms, a diamond wedding ring, so a diamond engagement ring. And the most notable part about her remains is that she was concealed in a sleeping bag, and there was a white pinstripe blanket wrapped around her, as well as a blue blanket, but it kind of looks like a tarp that's wrapped around her remains as well. So the medical examiner believed that she was between 110 to 130 pounds and between the ages of 29 to 41. Now, at first glance, there's no signs of injury, but it's believed that she was indeed beaten to death. After nearly 27 years, the San Joaquin Sheriff's Office was trying to identify the lady in the fridge, and they used genetic testing and the help of Othram to identify her in 2022. They then were able to build a profile and follow up with the possible mother and possible daughter of the lady in the fridge. So on February 23rd, 2023, the lady in the fridge was publicly identified as 29-year-old Amanda Schumann-Deza. At the time of her disappearance, she was 29 years old. As I previously mentioned, she was indeed separated from her husband at the time of her disappearance, and she also was the mother of 3 young children. I will say this is another case that is close to home as well, because the person of interest, or POI in this case, is that of Terry Rasmussen. Terry Rasmussen also goes along with 2 videos that I have done previously on my YouTube channel. I will put them in cards above, as he is connected to the Bear Brook State Park murders, or the bodies in the barrels, which is 4, or 1 is still unidentified, but 3 have been identified. And he is linked to other crimes here in New Hampshire and in California and various other places in the United States. If you or anyone you know has any information in regards to the death of Amanda Schumann, please contact the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office at 209-468-5087. Again, if you or anyone you know has any information in regards to the death of Amanda Schumann-Deza, please contact the San Joaquin Sheriff's Office at 209-468-5087. Our final case for today's video or episode is that of Tonya Lee Wills-Mullins, or Tonya Leah Wills-Mullins. There's different variations of her name, but she was another case that was really good to finally solve. So she was known as the Rankin County Jane Doe for years. She was discovered on September 6th of 1978 in Florence, Mississippi. Her body was found along an illegal landfill near the Byram Swinging Bridge along the Pearl River. She was wrapped in a blanket and just kind of left there. So at the time of her death, she was just 22 years old, and she was missing from Potter, Texas. When she was found, it was determined that she was at the landfill for at least a week prior to her discovery, and this is due to the hindrance of eye color. So after death, certain characteristics and colors fade from your body, and eye color is one of those. And it's one of those significant identifying markers that can be lost soon after death. Her body was devoid of any tattoos, clothing, and any other distinguishing marks. Investigators did take fingerprints and uploaded it to the NCIC, but no leads came from this. And ultimately, through genetic genealogy, this woman, known for years as the Rankin County Jane Doe, would be identified as Tonya Lee Wills-Mullins, or Tonya Leah Wills-Mullins. She was married, mother of two at the time when she disappeared, and she was tragically only 22 years old, which that blows my mind. So her disappearance and death is still being investigated, but it is believed that Samuel Little is involved in her death, or is a potential victim of his. Her death is still being investigated at this time. That, my friends, is today's victims that we talked about in our case today. I hope you guys learned something. Please, if you know any information or anything at all about the murders of the individuals, please contact each of the numbers that I have given you. I will also put them in the link down below, in the description, down below, the show notes, all of the above. And I will see you guys in my next video, or you'll hear me in my next podcast. Bye, guys.